everyone, and a welcome to Some Like It Classic. I'm your host, Tami Goveia, and joining me today for some classic conversation to speak about her new book, Captain of Her Soul, The Life of Marion Davies, is author Lara Gabrielle. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I just want to stare at this cover for a few seconds. Did you see the video I did about when I got it in the mail?
Yes, that was the coolest reveal.
It's so beautiful. Did it take you a long time to choose the cover?
Well, no, because when I saw that picture I've known that picture existed for years, and I always knew that I wanted that to be the cover if I could make it happen, and I made it happen. Um, the publisher, essentially the way it works is the publisher asks you to choose several photos,
Okay.
for the art department to see if they would work. And this is the one that I was like, please, 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 please pick this one. And fortunately, they came back to me and said, would they all look fine to us? Which one would you like? And I said, this one.
So why?
So
Why this photo?
why? Because if you look at her, she looks so confident
Mm,
and she looks so sure of herself, and she's like inviting you in. And it really speaks to me so much, and it really, I think, encapsulates who Marion Davies was. Just in that photo, you can see her her spirit. It's almost a little bit mischievous, uh, and just wanting to bring you into the story.
she had a real, I don't even like, it's odd, but I don't even like to speak about her in the past tense because
She does
after
feel very present.
Yes, because
Yeah.
especially after reading this, I feel she's still very much the light that she shined over her very short time here. I mean, comparatively speaking,
Right.
is still very, very present in modern day society.
Yes, she is. And I think for many people, I hope that will change after reading this book, but I think for many people, she's present in a way that doesn't really have anything to do with who she really was, like the Citizen Kane stuff. Um, it, it that has really followed her in a big way, and it's really done a number on her legacy. But for those of us who know Marion Davies and who know who she was, her presence is still very much felt, and it's a joyous presence.
It is.
It's just so what I've been saying to people is that I can't imagine having to work on a biography of somebody who was like a really terrible person. Because you have to be with your subject 24/7, really. And Marion was just such a wonderful person to be working with. She was just a, a joyous presence.
Do you happen to have a copy of the book next to you?
I don't next to me, but I can go get one.
Well, you know what I wanted to do? Um, the poem.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Okay. I was just handed a copy of the book. But
Thank you.
yes.
Listen
Okay.
in the wings.
Yes. Okay.
I would
So
I would love for you to read, that poem from Invictus by William Ernest Henley.
yes, absolutely. Let me get to it. Um, for the way beginning here. There it is. Oh, is that it? Yes, here it is. You want me to read it?
Please.
Okay. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
It brings me, I get teary-eyed when I hear it and when I read it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
especially after you read her story.
Yeah.
My question is, as a writer, we're drawn to subjects, stories that resonate with us, that speaks to our heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Marion has been a journey for you for what, 10 years?
Just about almost a
About
decade.
10
Yeah.
years. What is it about Marion that invited you into this journey?
I have always been a classic film fan. I've always loved, classic movies. And she was somebody who I knew from a very young age had a life that maybe hadn't been told properly. That she had an extremely interesting life. I got for my 13th birthday a copy of this book called The Times We Had, right, which has been marketed as Marion Davies' memoir for many years, and I read it and thought, wow, what a person. I mean, even at 13 years old, right? So fast forward a number of years, I started my classic film blog, realized that the research and the writing process really spoke to me, and I loved doing the research that went into these blog posts. So people started asking me if I would ever consider doing something bigger, and I said that would be really great. And Marion Davies she came right into my mind. And
No.
yes, and I couldn't shake the idea of Marion as a subject. I mean, she just stuck with me, and she was just there and there and there and there. So I went down to LA. I had no idea what the project would become or if it was even possible. I went down to LA, found her papers, and started going through her papers, and I didn't really know anything. I mean, I had the times we had, but there wasn't, there were names that were coming up in her papers that I had no idea of. I took those names down, the names that kept, coming up over and over again. Took those names down, took down the names of the movies that seemed to be important, and used those things as a jumping off point, and things started falling together. I found people who were still alive, who knew her well. I found family members. I found Mary Carlisle, divine, fabulous Mary Carlisle, who I met when she was 100 years old and remembered Marion from when she was working. She was really the last person alive who knew Marion while she was working. And so she could tell me all of these great stories. She went to Europe with them as well.
What was the response like? You pick up the phone. Hi, my name is Lara. I'm writing a book on Marion Davies.
Yeah.
Can I talk
I
to
do a
you?
lot. I had to do a lot of cold calling. Yeah, a lot of cold calling and a lot of letter writing. And the response was always, yes, how wonderful. Marion was the most wonderful person I ever knew. There was not one single person who didn't want to talk about her, not a single person, which says a lot about Marion and how she affected people.
Especially after all these years.
Yeah, especially after all these years.
Mhm.
Um, so I know a lot of people who write biographies. They have to deal with a lot of rejection, a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't want to talk to you, who are you, um, but I didn't have any of that. Not one person. So
So
I've been very lucky. That's one reason why I think this was sort of an unusual project, because Marion just had that effect on people that people wanted to talk about her, and people were so enthusiastic to talk to me. Um, yeah.
it seems, I mean, this is very superficial. She led a very charmed life. on a certain level.
Right,
On
exactly.
a
At a
certain
certain
level.
level.
On a certain level. And it's
Very superficial level, yes,
very
on the surface.
superficial level.
On the
If
surface.
you don't know anything about her, and you're living in the 1920s and 30s, and you're seeing this, to her, to other people, it's a charmed life.
Yeah.
However, we know that's not the case. Still, it sounds your journey was charmed in some degree because of the enthusiasm of the folks that wanted to speak with you and share their experiences about Marion.
It's all Marion, it's all how rare of a person Marion was. Just her generosity and her human her sort of capacity for human interaction and understanding who people were um is something very unusual, I think, in people.
I can only speak from my personal experience. I had heard of Marion Davies. I knew, clearly you can't speak about William Randolph Hearst without speaking about Marion, and vice versa. I knew she.
Although people have spoken about William Randolph Hearst without speaking about Marion,
Well,
but
that
that's
makes
a
no
whole
sense.
other story.
That makes no sense.
I
So,
mean, I agree,
yeah,
but
that makes no sense. It's impossible. So,
yeah.
I knew she had done films, both silent and talkies, but I had a lot of misconceptions about her.
Mhm.
And so what I would love is for you to tell us, who is Marion Davies?
That's a big question. That's a big question for, I mean, I've spent 9 years with her, writing this book. Um, let me do it this way. So, um, let me think of a couple of words I think that describe Marion. Marion was incredibly strong. She was very smart. She was a person of okay, so this now I'm doing more than words, but she was a person of um she was a person of extremely almost now okay, so pathological generosity almost. She was
Boy, does that hit the nail on the head.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, so she was so generous with her time, with her money, with her everything, that her friends worried about her. Um, so we can say that she was a generous person, but that doesn't really describe it enough. Her friends worried that she was giving because of she felt some insecurity about herself. Um, that she had to give of what she had in order to be loved, maybe.
Mm.
So her friends, you probably read this her friends made a pact. Her friends made a pact not to accept anything from her because they wanted to essentially teach her that they loved her for her and not for what she gave them. So that's a whole other side here. We can talk about all these positives, right? All the positive qualities of Marion as a human being, and then we could talk about the dark sides of those things, because I think that there was some of that. There was some thought that maybe she felt that she wasn't enough. We talk about her modesty, right? Her modesty as an actress. She never thought that her work was very high caliber or high quality, or she didn't think much of herself as an actress. And you could think of that as a positive, and you could also think of that as a negative, like that she uh her self-esteem, we could say, could be a bit lacking in some ways. So she was a complicated person. She was not um everybody talks about, how nice and wonderful she was. She was, but she was more than that. She was more than that. She had a lot of complexity. So yeah, the question of who Marion Davies was, we could go on for days with all of this, all of these analyses of her personality. And she loved her family. And again, she did some things with her family that she thought were helpful and sometimes weren't.
That sounds so normal.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, this is sort of a normal thing on a big scale,
Yes.
you know.
Her career,
Hmm.
talk about complexities,
Yeah.
what she had to overcome.
Hmm.
One of the things, the stuttering,
Hmm.
to go from talkies to go from silent film to talkies.
Yeah.
It takes a certain ilk.
She was an exceptionally hard worker.
Yes, and what fascinates me, one of the things that fascinates me about her is, after I read this, I thought success has nothing to do, or doesn't necessarily have anything to do, with someone's self-confidence. There are certainly people who are successful that have tons of confidence,
Hmm.
but Marion, it seemed to me, I'm going to be honest with you, her story haunts me, because for all the highs and all the lows, there is this enormous gray area that's haunting to me.
That's a very astute observation. Um, yeah, so this gray area, like, can you give an example of what you were thinking about with this gray area?
I think what reminded me of that was when you spoke about her dynamics with her family,
Hmm.
because they were so complex. The personalities in her family were so strong and
Yes, that's true.
complex,
Hmm.
and the relationships she had with them weren't black and white, although she would make choices and decisions thinking, to your point, that she was making the right decision for them.
Right,
And especially when you see, she had family members who were suffering
right.
physically and mentally, and that's such a helpless place to come from when you're trying to help someone that you love.
Yeah.
So there was that gray area.
Yeah, so I see what you mean. So for example, I think the person that you're probably that you're probably talking most about is Peppy, right?
Yeah.
Her niece Peppy, who had enormous talent and also was so um troubled by so many things. And Marion, on the one hand, wanted to help her, but also wanted to teach her. She had a different demeanor with Peppy than she had with the rest of her family, which is really interesting. Um, I have a telegram. I think this is in the book. I have a telegram between, that Marion sent Peppy, saying that she's wiring Peppy some money. This is it, no more. Whereas with other members of her family, she would be really sweet. Oh, sweetheart, here you go. This is, I'm so happy for you, blah, blah, blah. With Peppy, it's like, nope, here you go easy on this. This will have to last till you get home.
Yeah, but at the same time, you had WR saying, "Don't worry about it. I'll send you some more money." Right? It's like, good cop out.
Exactly. And yeah, it's sort of a reversal of roles a little bit. Um, yeah. Um, but so she was being strict with Peppy, which is not typical of Marion. With, and I think she thought that she was helping her, which I'm sure she was. I mean, that's probably the right thing to do in that situation. But then later on, Peppy goes way, way down into this, dark place, and Marion essentially puts her in a hospital, and that's, I don't want to, I don't want to go into that too much, but it's hard. It's really hard to know what to do with somebody in your family who is suffering like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough.
I had no idea the kind of business acumen that Marion had.
Yeah.
She was a successful actress. She had a very successful career. The critics they loved her. And this will tie into Citizen Kane at some point, and all the misconceptions because of that. But going back to Marion's business acumen, I remember reading just a bit of a part about just before the Depression hit. It's 1928, and she says, guys, to her finance team, the market's whacked. I mean, these are my words, people. This is not it's not the words she used. But I'm not getting a really good feeling about this. So I'm just gonna pull everything out for a little while until things calm down.
Yeah, she saw it coming. And this is 1928, when not a lot of people saw it coming.
Exactly,
right?
Especially a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
But she paid attention, and she watched the markets and sort of knew how to handle her money. And she, coming from a background where she didn't have a lot of money, she always kind of knew how to save it to make it last almost. So when she had a lot of it, that fed into the way that she managed her money, and she managed it really, really well. And WR was just completely useless with money. Which a lot of people are surprised about, because he had so much of it, right? But he, in contrast to Marion, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, never learned how to manage money. Everybody gave him what he wanted all the time. And so he spent himself dry in the late 30s, and Marion had to help him out. She didn't have to, but she did help him out. Yeah, but yes, she was very good with money and with business, and she managed to avoid being hit by the stock market crash because she had that sense in 1928 that she should take all her money out, and she did. And in those days, it was interesting. In one of my talks that I gave a while back, somebody asked, "Oh, well, the banks failed too, so she must have not put her money in the bank." And I think she didn't. I think that she didn't put her money in the bank, but a lot of people in that era didn't. Yeah.
This is there's just so many layers. I want to talk about one of the defining relationships in her life, and that was WR. So folks who don't know, WR is William Randolph Hearst. That's what he's called in the book.
That's what Marion called him.
That's what Marion called him. Again, the gray area. So much gray area. I really wanted to not like him when I started this book, because I had very strong opinions about who I thought he was. And then I read this book and I thought, dang it. It's not so black and white.
Complicated. Complicated people.
I know. dag nabbit.
Yeah.
His view of her
Mhm.
and how he wanted her depicted never wavered. And that was an issue. That was an issue for her career-wise. He did bend. He did bend occasionally, especially when it came to eventually she got into being able to do comedies.
Yeah, he was not completely inflexible, but he definitely had his own vision that didn't, he it was kind of his way or the highway, and sometimes people could pull him over to this side or pull him over to that side. But he always kind of came back eventually to his vision.
What do you think it was about Marion that enraptured him for what, the 32 years that they were together?
Yeah, I think it was Marion's spirit, and how she was so different from Millicent, his wife, who was now I have to sort of preface this with Millicent is not a villain. She is a really interesting person in her own right, and um, and many people who knew them both say that Marion and Millicent were a lot alike.
How so?
And they both had this kind of energy, and they both had this um they were both chorus girls, for one thing. They both had they were both very charismatic, and they um they had similar styles of speaking. I don't think Millicent had a stutter, but I think that they both kind of used words in similar ways. Um, but Millicent also had this high society. She was a high society lady. She really liked that world. And WR, from the very beginning, there was this tension between them, that Millicent liked the high society world, and WR liked the sort of the earthy, the more earthy. So he was sort of a man of the people, which again, people don't really think of William Randolph Hearst that way. But he liked the theater. He liked he liked culture, but kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know, salt of the earth culture. And Marion provided that for him. She was a very earthy person, and she would dance with him, and she would she would be. So the thing about Marion is that Marion would be 100% herself with anybody. She was the exact same person with her chorus girlfriends, in backstage at whatever show she was in, and with Winston Churchill at San Simeon. She was the same person. And I think that really spoke to Hearst, that she was not putting on airs with him. She was who she was. And I think maybe he didn't have a lot of that in his life. Also, she I talk a little bit about in the book about their first meetings, when they're first kind of starting to get to know each other, and they bonded over books. They bonded over their mutual love of Charles Dickens and the classics. And Hearst would bring books over to Marion's house and discuss them with her, and uh, they really became soulmates. They loved each other very, very deeply,
Mm.
and it was organic. It was an organic kind of love. It wasn't like boom, this happened and then they're in love. It's just like over the years they became a couple, and really by 1919 they were a pretty established couple. Yeah.
What kind of answers my next question, Orson Welles described their relationship as a love story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you, do you think that's true? But
Yeah, I really do. I think it's one of the real great untold love stories of the
mm,
20th century. I mean, I think I do a little number on it in my book, but they really loved each other in spite of all the challenges that they faced. And they faced a lot of challenges. And they remained together, and Marion was by his bedside, for 3 days when he died. She adored him, and obviously he adored her. And um the bit in the book when WR is close to death, and I talk about him passing notes under her door, uh I mean, that's love.
mm, it's, there's a paradox to it, because while he could be very controlling, there was a very strong unconditional love between the two of them.
Yeah, there was. He could be very controlling, um in many ways, but it was always for what he thought was best for her.
Right.
Like Marion said on her tapes, and this is actually where the title comes from. She said he was always trying to do what he thought was best for me because he really did adore me. But I'm the captain of my soul, and therefore what I want to do, I want to do myself, regardless of what other people think that I should do. So Marion made all her own decisions, but a lot of the time the decisions that she made on her own were out of respect and love for what WR wanted.
Sure.
So, yeah.
There wasn't a lot of, and I think for a lot of women, confrontation is not something we seek out for whatever reasons. And I got the sense that Marion didn't want to be confrontational.
Right. She stood up for herself.
She did,
Um,
but
she stood up for herself, but right, I'm not entirely sure that I would say she avoided confrontation. I think that it just wasn't her style.
yeah,
I think that she
that wasn't who she was. That's not who she
was
wanted to be.
so yeah, she was so in tune with how other people were feeling that I think that um she just didn't do that because she didn't want to make people feel bad, you know?
Yeah, she didn't want to hurt someone.
Yeah,
You say in tune with other people's feelings, I think of someone who's, an empathic on some level.
definitely. She
Yeah,
was definitely what we today would call an empath. 100%. Mhm.
I really want you to touch on her philanthropic work,
Yeah.
because you can still see that today.
Yeah, you can.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently about the whole idea of one's legacy in life, and for some it's their children, for some it's different for everyone. So I would love for you to speak on Marion's legacy and her philanthropic work.
Right. Marion said that the way that she personally wanted to be remembered was for her work with the children's clinic, with the Marion Davies Children's Clinic. She said, I'll probably be remembered more for my parties at, beach house or whatever, but the children's clinic is the real pride of my life.
Mm,
So, I'll talk a little bit about what the children's clinic was. So in 1926, Marion put together this foundation to provide medical care for children of West Los Angeles, low income children of West Los Angeles. And the clinic would be free of charge to all eligible children in West Los Angeles, low income kids, and they would receive everything that they needed, and their parents wouldn't have to pay a dime. And the fun thing too about the clinic is that, well, a couple of fun things, but the thing that all the kids remembered was the big Christmas parties. At the around Christmas time, the kids would come, they would get toys, and the families would all get a bag of groceries and a turkey. Every single family in the clinic would do that, would get that. So another thing that I think is interesting to note too is that in this era, West Los Angeles was largely Mexican and Japanese immigrants. So not only was the clinic providing a vital service to the community, but it was also kind of a safe haven from the racism of the area. And some interviews that I have with the kids who were treated at the children's clinic have touched on that. Have touched on the fact that the children's clinic really helped their families become, feel accepted.
And you share stories in here of lives that were saved because of the clinic.
Yeah. The last line of the book.
Yeah.
The letter, right? The letter from the clinic parent. Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the children's clinic, but what does that mean legacy wise?
Right. So you're talking about legacy as in today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The children's clinic still exists today. It's quite small. It doesn't have a lot of it doesn't do a lot. It's kind of folded into UCLA.
Okay.
But it has funded a lot of really important research. So there have been studies that have been funded by the Children's Clinic on the effects of the Zika virus on pregnancy and on pediatric AIDS.
Mm.
So the clinic is still doing that kind of work. So that, I guess, is part of Marion's legacy. And the donation that she made to UCLA, I mean, she donated the clinic to UCLA. We could go into all the details, but long story short, the donation that Marion made was 1.9 million in 1958, which was a lot of money. Yeah. So UCLA is, the UCLA Medical Center is very tied in with the Marion Davies legacy.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to just give a thank you to Kendra Bean.
Oh,
who you say inspired you to start the project, and to Carly Hildebrand.
Yeah.
For supporting you at the very inception.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I wanted to do that because it ties in to, the importance of family and closeness and friendship with Marion. And so I wanted to thank Kendra and Carly for supporting you, because it took several villages.
Yes, we don't do these things alone by any means. I mean, you've seen my acknowledgement section. It's like, there are so many people who have gone into this project and who have made it what it is. Kendra and Carly, absolutely. Kendra, helped me, because Kendra wrote a wonderful book on Vivian Lee. Called Vivian Lee, an Intimate Portrait. If you haven't got it, you should get it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, physically beautiful. It's got tons and tons of photos, but also it tells Vivian Lee's story in a way that has never really been done before. It's
And
really,
again,
really
another
quite a
very complex, no, very complex woman.
yes,
Yeah.
very complex woman in many
Mhm.
ways. Yeah. And she tells it with such pathos. It's just it's a great story. So anyway, Kendra um, said you should talk to this person, you should talk to that person, um, and specifically at the Margaret Herrick Library, and sort of set me up with a couple of people very early on. Um, and Carly was just such a great cheerleader, and I was anyway, just was so excited about the project just right at the very beginning.
I
So
can see the pom poms. Keep
yes,
going, keep
Carly.
going.
Yeah, yeah, love those two.
What, so
Yeah.
two questions. What is, as you were starting this journey and writing this book, what's one thing that really surprised you when you learned this about Marion Davies? And the other question is, and this is probably much more difficult, what's one thing that you've taken away from this that's changed you?
Yeah, wow, very, very interesting question. So the first one, the question about what surprised me about Marion was I knew that she had this sort of, that people misunderstood her, but I didn't know the extent of her strength and
Mm.
how um she weathered every storm with just such poise, and she really had this backbone of steel that's very inspiring. You look at the way she reacted to Citizen Kane. She said, "Who am I to tell Orson Welles how to make his movie?"
So smart.
Yeah, such a pro, and just let it roll right off her back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so she really had a lot of admirable strength in her. So, and then what was your other question? Oh, what do I take away from this that has changed me? I think one thing that Marion has taught me is that um we should always build other people up.
Mm.
You know, like was so she was so supportive of all her friends, and all, the she had no uh she didn't consider anybody competition. Everybody was a friend, and everybody was somebody um who should be helped, and whatever she could do to help people, she always did it. And so building up other people, building up other women, is something that we can all learn from, I think. And I've taken it to heart. I always make it a point to, whenever somebody has something something cool happening, I use the little little platform that I'm starting to have to help other people. And I'm not sure that I had that awareness before this. I think that this project really taught me that Marion really taught me.
That's beautiful. And that
Yeah.
that in and of itself is a legacy of sorts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Where can people find you on the socials?
On socials, well, I'm terrible at Instagram. I'm on Instagram, but I'm on Instagram. You can follow me there. Twitter, I am on Twitter a lot, so Twitter is good. At Backlots Film is my Twitter handle. My book has a Facebook page, Captain of Her Soul: The Life of Marion Davies, and I think that's it. I don't do TikTok or Snapchat or anything like that. I think that those are my social medias.
It's very time consuming. All the social
Yeah.
media stuff is very time consuming. So it's probably
Yeah.
smart to just kind of pick a couple and just stick with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Laura. You know, when I reached
It's my pleasure. Thank
I
you.
saw the
Thank
book.
you for asking such great questions.
Oh,
What lovely questions you had.
well, your writing inspired the questions, so it's a mutual admiration society here.
Oh, thank you.
I
I'm
went in.
glad. And
Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, and I was so impressed. You remembered so much. You read so closely. It was really, really cool. I mean, the 1928 stock market thing, that's some close reading.
I love reading. I love speaking to authors. It's just reading for me as a child. I mean, it was just my world. It's what I disappeared into. So it's just a good book. It's just a really good book. It's easy to remember. Lots of really good stuff. So it's your
Thank
fault.
you. I'm glad about that.
To the folks who are watching and or listening to this show, I want to thank you for your support. I want to encourage you to find this book, Captain of Her Soul: The Life of Marion Davies. It truly is an eye-opener on so many levels about a woman that folks need to know about and or need to know more about. To Laura's point, her influence is epic. It's a behemoth if you really think about it. And now is such an important time to be inspired and to stay inspired. And Laura and her writing is doing just that. So go find this book, everyone. You can find Some Like It Classic on Insta, Twitter, and Facebook at Like It Classic. Thank you for joining us, Laura. Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
until we meet again, bye.